Jackson here. Today I'm going to be breaking down all the different ways to stop on a fixed gear. Some of the best, some you might not know about, and some you shouldn't try. Let's get into it. If you're new to this channel, welcome. FOAD is a group of goofballs doing silly stuff on bikes, sort of related to fixed gear, more specifically fixed gear tricks, and also, all kinds of bikes. A little more on that later on in the video. Earlier this year, put out a movie called Last Try, all about bikes and tricks and having fun with your friends and cool places. So it would mean the world to me if you could go check it out. Link in the description. One of the first questions that comes up when someone hears about a fixed gear or rides one for the first time is how to stop. And there's some common ways and also some underrated, not so common ways that I'll show you in this video. Quick disclaimer before we get into the rest of the video: bicycles are obviously dangerous and fixed gears are even more dangerous. So please, please, please ride within your abilities, ride with caution. Practice these skills in an empty parking lot, away from cars. Make sure that you always wear a helmet and follow your local laws and that sort of thing. First up on the list is a skip hop. Basically, you're just lifting up the back wheel and letting it drop down, and just that little stop of motion slows your bike down. It doesn't really feel very smooth or fun, so I'm not a big fan of it. I do use it sometimes in emergency situations. The only advantage to them, to me, is that they're a little bit easier to do, and you can do them at half strokes a little bit easier. So instead of going a full rotation of your cranks, you can go a half rotation, do it with your opposite foot. I don't know. I don't really like them. I don't really ever do them out in the streets, but I did want to mention it here just because if you are new to fixed gears, you should at least know all the different ways that you can slow down your bike. For those of you who have seen the Cortec build video, you might notice that my bike looks a little bit different now. I'm still refining all of the details. I've got quite a few tweaks I want to make to the build, and I'm planning on doing a follow-up video. Next up is I'm just gonna call it the Backpedal, resisting pedal. I don't really have a good name for this one. It's basically just, if you have momentum, pushing back against the pedals, the opposite of accelerating, decelerating. I use this all the time in combination with skids to slow down. It can take a little bit more distance to slow down if you're just using this method. I tried to fake this for a couple shots and I just couldn't do it in a convincing way. So I decided to take my bike and go to one of the steepest hills that we have here and bomb down it and try to resist halfway through the hill. And boy, was that scary. It just feels so out of control, so wobbly and bouncy. I just didn't feel like I had any control over the bike. It's a prime example of a situation where, yes, I could have done a skid and it would have been more effective than the wobbling around on the bike, but I would have not been able to fully stop. If someone would have come through that intersection at the same time as me, there would have been nothing that I could have done. And it's just a good example of how fixed gears are just a little bit more sketchy. Next up on the list is by far the most effective way to stop on a fixed gear. Can you guess what it is? Brakes. Brakes are the most effective way to stop on any kind of bike. And you don't have to not have brakes if you're riding a fixed gear. The fixed gear community has stigmatized brakes, but if you're just getting into riding fixed gear, I definitely recommend that you ride with brakes. Even if you are a fixed gear veteran, there is no shame in running brakes. You are always going to be able to stop no matter what the conditions are. I'm certainly guilty of perpetuating this culture of toxic no brake having. I actually don't even have a fixed gear with brakes on it at the moment. And no, that's actually not a fixed gear bike at all. It's a crazy mountain scooter. I don't even know if you can call it a bike. I'm gonna make a whole video about it. I thought I could kind of fake it for a couple shots, make it look like a fixed gear. So that's coming very, very soon. So make sure you hit the subscribe button if you wanna see some weird mountain bike scooter stuff. I don't know what's gonna happen with that thing. I'm taking it to Southern Utah, to Moab, later this week, so it's gonna be wild. Most bikes will come with 1 or 2 brakes, and a lot of people like to only run 1 brake, which in my opinion, if you're gonna only run 1 brake, run the front. It gives the most stopping power and it makes the most sense to run with a fixed gear because you're already able to control that back wheel, so you can control the front wheel with your brake. Make sure that you don't panic and grab a fistful of that front brake because you can definitely endo. Next up on the list is the skid, and this is probably what fixed gears are most known for. Typically, you don't see other cyclists wasting their tires purposely skidding around the streets. Fixed gears have kind of become synonymous with the skid. Movies like Macaframa or MASH really epitomize the skid. People were shredding down these super steep hills in San Francisco, and they have no brakes, and their only way that they're slowing down at all is with skids. So I have a whole tutorial on how to do a skid, all the mechanics, so I'm not going to go into it in super depth here. I'll link that video in the description, so if you're a beginner first learning, go check that one out. So skids can provide a decent amount of stopping power. Are they as quick as using brakes? No, definitely not. The stopping power of a skid can greatly be affected by your tires, the pavement material, and the weather conditions. If you're running a really big tire, that tire is going to grab the ground a lot more, and it's going to stop you more quickly. It's also going to be more difficult to initiate the skid. Surface material can be a big factor. Concrete is typically a little less grabby, where asphalt has a little bit more stopping power. But if you get a little bit of dust or sand on top of asphalt or concrete, it's going to be really, really slippery. So if it's raining or snowing, that's obviously going to affect how slippery the ground is, and it's going to make it a lot more sketchy to try to stop if you're doing a skid. One of the big mistakes that I made when I first started riding fixed gear is I was doing these big long skids, 40, 50, 60 feet, and I was just running through tires, and I really didn't need to be skidding for that long. You can do short little skids, and it actually gives you a decent amount of stopping power, and you're not going to go through tires quite as quickly. Being able to do a regular skid to switch skid not only looks cool, but is very beneficial. It helps with tire longevity, and it will also help you stop more quickly in an emergency situation. If you only know how to do a skid with one foot, you're going to have to wait for that crank rotation to come all the way around before you're able to initiate the skid. Being able to use both feet, obviously you're going to be able to react a lot more quickly, which is a huge benefit. I used to live in Seattle. It obviously rained there all the time, and they also have really steep hills. I used to be able to get down those hills pretty easily, but I happened to go down this one hill that was made out of, it was like this finest little pebble. It didn't feel rough at all. Didn't notice the surface material at all, and I tried to do a skid going down this hill, and because these tiny little rocks were really, really slippery in the wet, the skid did nothing. Like, it literally was not slowing me down at all. It was a terrifying experience. Luckily, I was okay. Luckily, there was no cars around, but it can be really, really scary. Doing skids is not always predictable. Let me know in the comments if you liked this little AI art story time. I had a blast putting it together, so I'd love to do more. Let me know if you want to see it. By the way, no matter how you stop on a fixed gear, you should always use foot retention. It'll help you stay glued to the pedals as you're picking up speed and the cranks are going round and round, and it will also help you have more control of the bike because you'll be able to pull up on those straps and get leverage backwards, which is what you want to do. You want to stop going that way more. You want to go that way. I'll drop a link to maybe some straps that I think are good down in the description. Before we get into our last legitimate way to stop, I want to talk about a couple of ways you shouldn't stop on a fixed gear. Number one is falling. Don't just fall to stop. You can do it, but it probably isn't going to feel good. Doing the out of control weight over the front end type of skid. I hate when I see people do these. It obviously makes the skid easier to do because you have less resistance on the back wheel, but because your weight is so far forward, you have a much easier time going over the bars, and also you're not going to have as much control of the bike fishtailing back and forth. Foot jam. You can do a foot jam. Not really a legitimate way to stop. If you did this at any sort of speed, it would be really, really bad. But foot jams are a fun trick. So last up on the list is stopping with your foot. I know it as the TED shred. I don't really know what people call it nowadays. Let me know in the comments what you call it. So you basically just take one of your feet off. I prefer to take my front foot off, and you put it on the back tire and you slow your tire down with your foot. It's really, really simple. One of the things I like about it is if you're cruising going fast, it's a really nice, lazy way to stop. There's two ways to do this. There's the lazy way, which you just put your foot on the back tire and then your wheel is still spinning, but it has some resistance. Or you can put your weight, stand up on that back foot, and it will cause the wheel to fully stop, and you'll lock up the back wheel and you'll be doing a skid. The one bummer about a TED shred is it's gonna eat through your shoe really, really quickly, which sucks if you picked up a brand new pair of shoes and then you decided to go ride your fixed gear in them, and then you just ruined them when you couldn't stop going down a hill and had a TED shred. You could be doing a TED shred down one hill and it could eat through half your shoe. It happens really, really quickly, more quickly than you think. It also smells terrible. Something about rubber on rubber is just awful. So if you're riding in front of someone, make sure you apologize afterwards. Because the TED shreds ruin your shoes, I don't ever really do them. Only if I'm really, really lazy at the end of a ride, or if I just have no other way of stopping. And also there's like all types of skid tricks. I don't really do them. I suck at them. I ate shit trying to do one for this video, but those are cool. Not an effective way to stop, but fun to do. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate the support. Go follow FOAD on Instagram and TikTok. Check out foadgang.com for some gear, and I hope to see you in the next one.